Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Jack Devine calling, well, not calling you, but saying hello from down here in the basement, the post-flood basement. You can see we've got some plastic up there. We had a leak, and our house has radiant heat, so it's entirely possible that the flooring is the problem here. So we're trying to isolate things, but I had a couple of cancellations this morning, and I figured I would come down here and play a little guitar because it's well humidified. I have not been able to sleep very well though. So I'm not sure if folks are interested in this kind of thing, but this is something I see in a lot of guitar players and something that I'm very critical of in other guitar players, and likewise I'm critical of my own playing, and that's bending and intonation accuracy. And while being perfectly in tune isn't always necessary to be effective or evocative emotionally, it certainly is it seems to me a healthier premise to go forward is to like be able to adhere to the common strictures of being in tune, and then deliberately from that position of control vary whether or not we're a little flat or a little sharp to create the the effect that we're after. There's no way, like BB King does not bend in tune, but I would never be critical of those bends. They're very deliberately flat, or something like that. That's a good example. All right, so today I'm working with a nice slow progression, which I think is almost the most important part of practice, is to make sure you're doing it slowly so your ears and your hands have an opportunity to process the parameters that you're trying to control. And if you can do it slowly, repeatedly for a couple of hours, I don't know, over the course of a few weeks, you'll build up a much faster reflex time and connection between your ear and your hands. That's really the essence of expert guitar playing, in my opinion, is creating a pathway between your ear and your fingers rather than your eyes and your fingers. You don't want to be looking at this. I mean, it's helpful, but generally speaking, we spend our whole lives coordinating our hands and eyes to grab things, to point at things, to type, to do whatever we're doing. We're like constantly looking at stuff and manipulating our hands with using our eyes. But if we can shift the focus from the eye to the ear, we can be in for a meaningful surprise. Appreciate my efforts on the excellent insights. All right, well, look, this is purely, I'm just sharing with you how I practice. And so while I would never say that, thank you for the comment, by the way, I would never say anything like this is the way. This is a way that I've been successful at practicing this very, very critical part, all right? When you go and you bend, you're deliberately foregoing the guidance of the fretboard, right? I mean, the fretboard has some pretty accurate intonation already provided, right? So all these kinds of things, but when you go and you do a little band up like that, right? And I'm not talking about bending into a note and adding a shit ton of vibrato so that you have the Britney Spears like camouflage. You're moving so the target can't be really defined. I'm talking about like a committed choice, kind of the way Joe Walsh approaches a lot of slide playing. He'll come up and go and hold it. Greetings, Mr. I don't know what that said. Was that somebody teasing me for looking like Steve Buscemi again? Okay, so we're here. I got the 335, both pickups. Everybody's up on 10 volume wise. Tones are rolled back though, and I'm shooting for a lot of. I want there to be a lot of what I would think of as like a footprint that happens after I play. Like after I hit this note, there's quite a bit of aftermath, right? So reverb, delay, goo it on. I've elected to go for a pretty, it's not jazzy, it's kind of out to lunch. It's this Doors song that I've been tripping out on lately. Like I said, I've got some really bad sleep, so I've been listening to some music from my youth, and I thought Crystal Ship is just an interesting melody. I was sitting there dealing with this, so that's... we have a harmonic minor. Okay, now, like I said, repetition is what we're after. We're after reducing variables while maintaining some sort of fascination with the exercise. Okay, so choose something like a melody that you love. All right, this is just an example. This is not me like saying, do this exercise and you'll be better in 2 weeks. No, this is just a method of getting better. Okay, choose a progression. Today's progression is kind of interesting to me anyway, and that it has this like, before you slip into, like I said, I've been out to lunch, no sleep lately. F minor to C minor to B flat major to, what was that, C sharp major, right? And then back to F major, B flat major, and then up to C major, back, and F to another kiss, another kiss. And this C chord right here. Nice melody to play over top of that. Okay, before you slip. So that's our big note right there. That's C note. Okay, and that's over top of the F minor. Back to the root. Then again, kind of an out to lunch. All right, so another flashing dance at bliss, another kiss, another kiss. So what am I practicing here? I'm practicing bending accuracy and dynamics. I'm not going to just come in here and go every note at the top of my range. I want to be living in the lower part of the sound that I dial up so that I have access to all of the inflections and kind of the grayscale of clean to grind that exists inside of a guitar sound. A properly set guitar sound, in my opinion, has some flexibility by and large. I mean, there's sometimes where you want to be able to just hit the guitar as hard as you want and have it not move. Right, lots of compression or something on like a clean sound or something. But when we're talking about being expressive, right, you don't want things to just be like a brick wall. At least I don't generally. So I like there to be some, like if I play clean, very clean sound, all right? And practice playing quietly, but bending accurately. So if we go, audio is breaking up, even when I just talk like a normal person. We've been having some spotty stuff over here with our internet connection. I wonder whether or not that has anything to do with it. Can anybody else attest to is it the overdrive on the guitar is crackling up, or is it even when I'm just talking normally like, oh, that's a crappy internet connection? Because if I'm overdriving the condenser mic on the phone, well, I can obviously lower the volume of the music that I'm making. I can't do anything about my internet, unfortunately. In my opinion, how shall we say it, probably out of sync latency issue. Huh. So is that what we're experiencing, or is that somebody else on somebody else's side? We have 9 people tuning in. There never is very many people here, but that's just fine for me. All right, so that's how I'm practicing this. I've got a sound that's too loud and too bright, and I'm deliberately trying to control. It's not too bad. That doesn't sound like it doesn't sound too good. Yeah, audio started dropping in and out just recently. Nothing's breaking up on your end. All right, thanks for answering, guys. I'll try to soldier on. I'm cutting out. Crystal clear over here. Weird. Sounds great in Virginia. All right, so I'm not sure what to do. I wish I had more control over this kind of thing, and to be honest, I find live streams extraordinarily convenient from a generating them perspective, much more so than recording and going into a DAW and having to clean up audio and do all that stuff. And it's only because of its ease that I'll do this stuff, because I'm just too fucking lazy to do that. Just play, that works. All right, sorry, Ian. All right, so the idea of practicing a melody, right, that you've got your mind around, all right? I'm gonna stick with my loop here, all right? So I've got some interesting changes though to make. I've got a major F and a minor F. I've got I've got a C minor and a C7 on my end, all right? And then we've got a B flat major, and now we've got these other kind of chords right here. So let's just bear that in mind as we go forward, that it doesn't have to be this progression. But what you can hear here, what you can hear in this example is that I'm playing quietly, but it could have just as easily been. All right, how am I doing that? I'm holding the pick gently, and I'm making sure I can kind of hear the. If we're starting like barely playing. Like that. We're trying to make sure we only lean in on the emphasis notes that we're interested in. So, all right, let's do it. Let's try doing let's practice trying 1 fret bends into melody notes. It's tough to do this stuff because you're thinking, okay, I'll make up an arbitrary interval I'm trying to bend to every note, systematically apply it across the melody, and watch yourself wipe out. It's definitely more challenging than you think if you really adhere to it. If you freestyle, okay, then fine. You'll just do it when you can, right? That's a very gentle way of playing that, right? We're bending up to the melody note before you slip into unconsciousness. That's a nice move. Now you look at some of the ideas that are happening between the right hand dynamics and the left hand pull-offs, okay? So if I dig in, that's a big hit. It was literally 2 pick strokes on the high E string. pull off. Right? Right? So one last thing we can obviously practice on this progression that may or may not happen is we get to use that diminished sound or the harmonic minor sound over this last chord, the C7 chord, because we're going from the 5 dominant to 1 minor, and that just always sounds very clutch, right? So if we go, the days are bright and filled, right? That kind of thing. So you want to look for progressions that'll give you an opportunity to practice the same thing over and over and over. And if you can target, like, okay, over top of that C chord, I'm always going to try to do either diminished or a harmonic minor lick, all right? Or just kind of give yourself a chance to take a breath and regroup, right? Play in one octave over and over and over again. Practice the same ideas, right? You want to, repetition is your friend. Absolutely. Reps, reps, reps. I'd rather you have a depth of knowledge than a breadth of knowledge. And that way you can take your expertized approach, okay, that you've developed in one spot, and then just bring it someplace else. So rather than, you could be singing, so there I am kind of out of that kind of sound, all right? So that's different than this, which, did that disappear? Oh, God, phone calls. Phone calls always. All right, we're back. Whenever somebody calls me on my phone while I'm doing one of these, it shits the bed. All right, so aside from being obviously the world's least technically aware person, with the exception of guitar, that's the only technique I understand. I would love to hear any questions from the peanut gallery, if they're out there. And I will do the best I can to keep up with you guys. All right, so that's really just, that's today's, the bulk of today's office hours is to talk about, not this song, but the idea about the manner in which I'm trying to teach you guys to fish a little bit, right? If I can teach you guys how to catch a fish and work on your bends, I always feel like this is the element that most of my students, they think they've got their bending under control, and then I'd say their accuracy is problematic. The vibrato, obviously, is something that we can continue. This is a continuous battle, all right, to get the right, we want the right amplitude. We want to be nice and consistent, especially on our roots. And a lot of people, when we play out of say we're playing a C chord, over a C, and it's a C major, and we go, this vibrato can be too wide, all right, and effectively make it sound like it's going, because it's just too wide rather than like a more narrow. Okay, but the phrasing of this melody is lovely in my opinion. It's definitely very dreamlike. Look for other ways of playing it and enjoy yourself while you do it. Let's see if you can do that. And hopefully just a little guidance in terms of the method of implementation of practice, right? Because sitting down and doing the typical thing, which is definitely a valid way of doing it, which is where you plug your guitar into a tuner and you put it into pass mode where you can actually see the intonation that you're doing, and you sit there and you play against the drone note going, F, 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 and you would be going, just bending, or rather F, right? You want to make sure you're playing in tune all the time. Very difficult. All right, so what do I have here? Sorry if we're not on the same page. What date? Sorry, this is a student of mine. Are you thinking? I must have got my wires crossed here. So look, at this point, let's kick it over to any kind of Q&A kind of thing. If anybody has any questions, I'm very hyped to get involved and answer, because to be honest, I'm dreading what's going on behind me. This flooding is just a problem here. I just hate it so bad, so much. So do we have any questions here? All right, just play, that works, Ian says. So that's the last comment, is basically everybody talking about. Walt, do you think of the different kinds of bends as falling into distinct categories, like a vocabulary of bends to use in the right contexts? Curious how you read the jam and feel out how to apply them. Okay, well, first of all, practice is different. Great question, Walt. So thank you. My opinion, preface everything with that, is that I do not practice while I play, and I definitely don't like to talk. I don't like to have my brain talking while I'm playing publicly. If I'm playing, and I let go. I literally turn off the guidance system and trust your feelings, Luke. And I just try to feel my way through. I try to relax and rely on the training that I've given myself up until this point, okay? So that's my approach when I'm playing. When I'm practicing, I do everything I can to put the gas totally in the other direction, okay? And so I'll stop trying to feel and try to curtail all the expressive stuff into a focused funnel of, like, what am I specifically working on? Like I said, bending into every note in the melody from one fret below. So if that's right, that kind of thing, okay? That's how I like think about practicing this kind of stuff. So when I think about I think about certain bends as falling in distinct categories? Yes, I do. I think of them as one step, half step, whole step, and minor third. I think of them as, am I bending into pitch, as a, like, am I going to be there on the attack? Like that kind of, am I bending up before I hit it, like a ghost bend? Am I pre-bending, right? Or am I bending up to that, right? Right? Do I want to overbend on purpose? And just kind of let the whole thing kind of go psychedelic and crazy? That's another idea, like the overbending. Or am I doing more like a microtonal kind of thing? Like if I ditch this super ambience here and just get back to like a typical amount of goo, right? Come on, you disappear. There we go. If I'm doing something where I'm doing like, right, those are bends, those are teensy weensy. Okay, so it's that kind of thing I'm definitely thinking of while I practice. I used to sit down and try to do licks that I already knew. Now everything on the G string gets a little goose up its tush. And then you end up with that Jeff Beck, where you get a little snark to it, right? And that's a very compelling parameter to be able to go and turn up, or, be gentle with it. You could do it on just a few notes, right at the very end, and give it that little bit of sass at the end of your lines. So how I read the jam and feel out how to apply them. Yeah, I don't know how I do that, to be honest. I literally have let go of the process and have allowed the the C's to take me where they're gonna go. I kind of let the music ragdoll me a little bit, and I try to be part of it rather than try to control it. That said, there are times where I need to control it to make it go where it needs to be for like a segue. Say if there's like a part in a song, right? Like the more defined it is, obviously the more committed I have to be to it. So I'm constantly going in and out of that state of flow versus like analysis of the moment and hitting my marks. There's some like scripted things that have to happen in music, and then there's other times where it's okay to kind of let off the pressure and see what happens as an ensemble. So I would definitely encourage you to do as much free form practice as possible. Some people will say, "Oh, free range like noodling is counterproductive," and it's counterproductive to learning specific skills, but it's not counterproductive to learning the skill of how to create on the fly. So if you don't practice spontaneous generation, well then, there you go. So that in and of itself could be something to talk about. All right. So the specific bends, though, yeah, okay. The other things I'll think about is this a blues bend or a country bend? Definitely. Like I'm very conscious of if I'm doing like a blues based sound, the idea can be more like a little bit less concerned about, it's more about intensity, and country stuff, like if I'm going like accuracy is what I'm shooting for. Now I'm not trying to be sloppy with the blues. I'm just, if there's a 51-49 kind of majority vote towards making it feel compelling versus accurate, I'm tending to lean towards that conviction over accuracy when I'm playing rock or taking a rock or a blues approach. Now, World News says, can I talk about the minor third video on how you switch from the G and C chord? I'm a little, when I said that mixolydian, but actually follow the chords. I don't think I said that, World News. Let me see if what you're talking about. I mean, if we're talking about the minor third video, you mean the flat third video? Like when I'm using, let's say I was doing, let's clean this up even more. All right, I think we can safely get rid of the crystal ship loop, and then we'll go out of the looper mode and come back into the sounds of, so let's do this. Okay, boom. All right, so typical clean sound here. We can add a little drive. So if we were looking at Jerry, okay, World News has gotten back to me. Thank you. Sorry, it'd be so nice if in a way that we were face to face or something like that, right? All right, so if we were looking at, if you're saying G to C, that kind of sounds like we were probably talking about like, if we're looking how to play over Bertha or something. So let's think about that. Let's get rid of that. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, what am I talking about when I talk about that brightened major third approach from beneath? Okay, over top of the C chord, I'm looking at a couple of options, right? But if we were talking about C major and playing C major pentatonic over top of the C major chord in Bertha, and G major pentatonic over top of the G major chord, that's really the philosophical break that I feel like people miss when they do the proper amount of analysis to determine that we're playing from the one chord to the 5 chord, rather than thinking we're playing from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. We're not. If we think about it like that, then G major is not correct. Nobody wants to hear that F sharp over top of our song. We want to hear F. And with that said, even that, I'm not really that crazy about playing C Ionian over top of the 1 chord, and definitely not really feeling going. That would be G Mixolydian. Those would be the most like theoretically correct approach. However, what I see in practice on the versions of Bertha that I'm most interested in is actually more of a commitment to the approach that I'm about to, endorse. I like the earlier Berthas, like around 71. And that sound right there is created by playing the major pentatonic of whatever chord you're playing over. So if you're over a C chord, you're playing C, A, G, E, D. All right, and if you don't get that happening, you got some trouble right there in River City. Okay, and there we go. So if we've got, what we want to do is learn how to get into the third and out of it from its flat third. That kind of approach. So over top of that C chord, we want to be seeing this idea, right? Or all right, so with that passing tone between the 2nd and the 3rd degree, we want to insert the flat 3rd in there. So now we've taken our pentatonic scale and technically created a hexatonic scale, I suppose. There's 6 tones, all right? But don't think of it like that. Think about it like an approach tone into the major 3rd. Sorry. Right, and out of. So this is one of the little drills that I try to teach a lot. So we're sliding into the 3rd with our middle finger. Yeah, that's right, New York. Why am I doing that rather than? It's just a good habit because sliding into notes is going to prove to be a skill that you're going to want to develop anyway. So you might as well get busy with that. And again, we're sliding back rather than, we can always pull back, right? So we could do that, right? But I like the idea of moving the hands in and out of chord position. So I like sliding into the position that the note that. Okay, that's why I'm using my ring finger here rather than the pinky. I don't want to go, because then I can't form a C chord and be ready to rock. Okay, so that little idea of going, and then we rock our finger back onto that flat 3rd and go pull back. Down, slide, up, down, up, slide. All right, now you can shift up to the octave. You can go up to the 6th. And we can come back down. As well, that's kind of a slick move too. Okay, so that's all over the C chord. And then when we come to the G chord, we don't move and play the same lick. We find it in the C chord shaped G chord right here. pretty soon we start sounding like that pre-72 but post-69 Jerry. All right, that's kind of the sound that I like. When playing notes, do I think of the interval note when improving? I don't think of it anymore, but I certainly used to kind of be aware of it. But now at this point, I'm just hearing, again, I've developed what I'm after, what I'm trying to teach everybody, which is note and intervallic recognition relative to whatever chord we're playing over, so that you already effectively have meaningful talking points from that position. So when we're on the root and we're trying to get to the fifth, we're gonna come through the third. Right? If I'm hearing ba-do down, ba-do down, I want to have pathways up to it or down to it. Right? So we could hear that like in shortening bread, right? That's a great old traditional melody that utilizes the major pentatonic. And then the flat third. Mama's little baby loves shortening, mama's little baby loves short, flat third, that fluidity of that sound, that's what I want you to work towards. All right, that's kind of like the major equivalent of being like fluid with that sound, okay? That minor pentatonic. That flat third, that's minor pentatonic, right? Straight up. Using a little bit of one scale on top of the other is a really great sound. So when playing notes, do I think of the interval? And at this point, no longer. Initially, it's a good start. It's definitely a good starting point to be aware of what you're doing. I tend to think of them out of chord shapes. So if I see the C chord from there, okay, or so think about it from the root note behind, like a back door, a front door, or a side door. So that's like directly underneath. The other is kind of behind the original note, and the other is, so a very front door approach would be, you see how I've come up the neck quite a bit versus going. So you want to be in control of the blend between the happy and the bitter. Okay, so if you learn a couple of these licks that are out there and allow them to kind of expand and contract, I think you'll find yourselves in the same position that of your favorite guitar players. So I'm not sure what's going on here if I'm making myself clear, but the idea isn't to be too dogmatic about anything that I'm doing. This has been my experience. It's worked out well for me over the years, but it did take some time to kind of come upon the idea, the approach. So if you can think about taking that one lick and learning it in 3, 4, 5 different, from the same note, learn it here, or here, or right? And that way you're not limited to only having a unique solution to like the problem of, hey, I hear this sound, I want to reproduce that sound out of my fingers. If you have multiple solutions for how to pronounce that word, so to speak, you don't have to be in this unique place. The way I do the things you do. Well, the way you bop, the way you look so sweet. The way you look so sweet, the way you look so sweet. You know you could have been a candle. You know you could have been a candle. Right? So we're dealing with it. Yeah. Let's talk about the Santana approach of improvising. Yeah. You've struck upon a bone of contention between myself and the guitar world writ large. I genuinely dislike listening to Carlos Santana play music. He's not my favorite guitar player. Not to discredit or discount his impact in terms of waking up the world to the contributions of Mexican Americans. My wife is a Mexican American. My sons are little güeritos. I love Mexican culture. So it is not about that. It is entirely about the first part of this lesson, which is intonation. I find Carlos Santana to routinely be sharp. I view his intonation skills on classic recordings, which they sound awesome. Like the band Santana is fucking sick, but him personally, I think he's not. I don't think he's the strongest element of it. I would have far preferred to hear Neil Sean, 15-year-old Neil Sean playing, probably actually to the more sophisticated at the time, or at least the more commercially viable Carlos Santana at the helm. And that's not to say that there aren't some meaningful moments, but I don't really sense a Santana approach other than coming up high and going and then bending flat. Thank you. Ugh. He, to me, is the Kirk Hammett of the 60s. Unless we're talking about like latter era when he tried to become a fusion guy, in the 70s when he was playing the little tiny Yamaha. All right, so I'm not really, as you can tell, I've had to put on a flame suit more than once or twice to defend my position, and I'm a little defensive about that, so sorry. So good to have. So Ian says, good to have it down for each inversion so you know where you are with any chord. Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm doing. So Walt says, laugh out loud. Joey Jamstall is somewhat... All right, I put Carlos with Doc Ellis. If you can take LSD and perform at a high level, there's some credit in that. Okay, so we're talking about him taking the mescaline at Woodstock and playing Soul Sacrifice. Is that the thing that's creating his bona fides as a rock legend? Playing high is not necessarily something that is that meaningful to me unless you stumble upon something powerful and revelatory. And that's not to say he wasn't having a moment there, but what about John Mayer? I think John Mayer is a very, very accomplished musician. I think he has done exactly what he set out to do from a young... I think his wish came true, and it wasn't for nothing. It was through a lot of hard work. Hardworking, talented guy. He is absolutely an impressive... He's always impressed me. But I was kind of turned on to him early by when I was working in studios. I was hearing, I think, Room for Squares and stuff like that. I knew the guy. I think I knew the guy who was involved with making that record. And then at the time that record came out with that nice that nice little major seventh sound on the... Yeah, the boys da. Right. That record made me realize, oh, that guy's pretty awesome. And then right around that time, I met a guy named Tomo Fujita, who turned out is still a teacher up at Berkeley. And Tomo and I shared a penchant for Red 335s from '66 and playing through Pro Reverbs and using like mild overdrive and an obsession with rhythm. Now, Tomo's chops are significantly more developed than mine in terms of some of the 16th note triplet ideas and like his steadfast dedication to playing funk and jazz. I think I've veered off into another direction, but he and I actually got along quite well, both in writing. Like we had we were both members on a forum for many years, and we similarly would chime in with similar opinions, it seemed. And then I've had the opportunity to meet him once or twice in person, and he was always extraordinarily complimentary and cordial. And so he and I would have little sessions of hanging out for a second or two, talking about techniques and ideas. And it turns out that John Mayer was a disciple of his, or at least worked with him while he had his brief tenure at Berkeley. And it's my understanding that they are still somewhat in touch, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And I could only hope to have one of my young Turks go on to become something meaningful in the collective consciousness that we call pop music. That would be amazing if one of my, I have a couple of different, I don't really classify them too aggressively, but when I think about it, then I have some guys who they're young enough and talented enough that they could in 10 years they could actually go someplace. And it's very nice to have some people who are like budding musicians rather than guys who have enough money to hire a good golf pro to get their game together in the twilight of their life. I have a lot of those kind of guys they picked it up when they were young. They kind of zigged instead of zagging down the road of musical commitment, and now they're coming back with a degree of frustration because they loved playing the guitar and they want somebody to help guide them back towards how to get their rudiments back together. And I like being the Sherpa that guides that person too. However, it is nice to take care of like a young pup and kind of guide them and mold them in that way. It is different. So I do appreciate what Tomo has the opportunity to do on a daily, teaching younger brains how to approach and examine music and consider it. And it was with that in mind that I enjoy giving off what little tutelage you might be able to extract from these lessons. The good news is that they're there forever. So, or maybe that's a bad thing. So John Mayer, I love Red. Red is an incredible. So Red plays with a friend of mine who is more of a jazz guy who kind of slums over with the telly playing, and Joel Harrison and Red are friends. I have yet to meet Red, but obviously Red is a premier country player and telly spankaholic kind of guy. He's apparently just one of the nicest dudes ever, and I don't understand how he makes little sausage fingers of his do what they do, but that's very impressive. I don't listen to any of his music, but I mean, obviously, having been to Nashville a few times and seen Kelly's Heroes and all those guys that played down at Robert's Western World, that gig, and him being one of the kind of elite few that have graduated through that doctorate program, so to speak. His bona fides are totally rock solid. Can I talk about how and when and to use the flat 7 in major pentatonic and flat 3 arrangements? Judd asks. Judd, I will 100% talk about that right now. All right. So yeah, those are Vienna sausages. I agree with you, Ian. All right. So not knocking our man here. So let's use the example I most often use when I talk about the idea of playing using flat 7s into major thirds. All right, and we'll talk about it in the context of, by the way, the Doc Ellis thing, Ian, is also quite awesome. I mean, to think about pitching a no-hitter screaming high on LSD is fucking ridiculous. I mean, that's nuts. All right, so let's get a little going down the road feeling bad kind of idea. 1, 2, 1, 2, Okay, that'll do. All right. So if we examine, let's see if I'm too loud here. I think I could afford to have a little bit more drive there. All right, so boom. So let's talk about that, okay? So Judd asks, can I talk about how and when to utilize the flat 7? Okay, so if we were playing from that first chord change in Going Down the Road Feeling Bad is E major, boom, da, 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 into an A chord. Now all those little pump chords that I'm doing where I'm going, those are kind of optional. That's not really there. That's just a way of suspending the sound. It's kind of like if I'm dribbling the basketball and I pass to another teammate and they quickly boom, boom, back to me, right? So you take the heat off of you, give it to somebody else, then you get the rock, all right? That kind of thing. So if we're playing over top of that, we don't have to address those. I'm not pumping to those while I play. I don't go... and go through an A A arpeggio and an E arpeggio and then a D arpeggio. All right, what I'm thinking is I'm blanketing the whole sound in E major pentatonic. So that's going to be like your basic. Right, so that's 1, 6, 5, 3, flat 3, 2, 1. Kind of like Blue Sky, but with a flat third, right? So. And what we'll do is we'll add the flat 7, that D note at the very end of our line. So we'll be thinking like this: E major pentatonic, I'll say E major pentatonic, flat 3, E major pentatonic, flat 3, flat 7, right? Like that kind of thing. E major pentatonic, flat 3, E major pentatonic, flat 7, A. Okay, so thinking that in your mind. Sorry. Right, we want to hit that D note right as we're about to transition to the A chord. And I refer to this technique by this little, it's not a real term, but in my little fiefdom, sure, we use this vocabulary, okay? We call it the blinker. All right, and it's like I'm driving down the highway and I'm changing lanes to go from the E sound to the A sound. And in order to create the indication to the whole band, right, we're going to indicate that we're going there by playing the flat 7 of the chord we're playing on, so that when we release into the chord that we play into, that's going to be our A, we're 1 fret above the third of the A chord. So we're going E, 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 and then we're going to hit the D over top of the last little bit of the E, and then release into the third of the A chord, okay? So we're going to do that kind of. Trying to dogmatically apply it across every chord, and it can work on the front. Going from the E to the A, we're going to get this kind of sound. So it's going to relieve itself from above the third of the target chord. When we're on the A, if we go and apply its flat 7, it'll be underneath the third of the target chord, which is going back to E. So that G resolves up into the third of the E major chord. We do it again. Da, da, down into the third of the A. And then da, da, da. If we hit the flat 7 again over that last E, we can go. Sorry. Da, 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 E, 2, 3. Right, if we hit the flat 7 over that little pump of the E chord, it'll come up into the third of the B chord. And then if we hit the B's flat 7, it'll resolve back. Okay, so when we're playing from 1 to 4, okay, you get the top-down resolution. When we're playing from 4 to 1, we get a bottom-up resolution. Okay, so that's all we're really talking about. Okay, Judd, is that making sense to you? So the lick that I used to learn this is, you'll see this all over Garcia's playing. But again, that Skull and Roses record really left some indelible marks upon my approach, both tonally, my willingness to play guitar like Grateful Dead music with a little overdrive, and a humbucking Gibson sound, which is one of my favorites. So that's as E major pentatonic as you can get. Do do da do da do da do da do da do da da. Flat 7 da. Then we're gonna go. the G over the A chord coming up. Okay, so we're going to keep using that over and over again. All right, and over time, you'll end up with. The sound of the major pentatonic flat 3 over each of those major chords, E, A, and B, with the occasional use of the flat 7 right at the very end of it. So in a way, it's kind of like we're using the Mixolydian. We're using all the notes that are ultimately going to be contained in our Mixolydian scale. But we're being very, very parsimonious with it. We're being extraordinarily tight-lipped about the use of that last. It's like a trump card. It's literally the card that we play at the end of our hand over top of each of the chord tones that we're playing. And during the bulk of our time spent on each of those tonal centers, E, A, B, and C sharp minor, I want you to think about utilizing your pentatonic flat 3 over the major chords, and then the time you'll spend over the C sharp minor. Really, all you really want to do is target coming up to the 6th degree of the major pentatonic you're playing over. So over E, you want to come up and tag the root of the chord. Right? That sounds really good when you do that, okay? Because up until that point, you've been targeting the 1, 3, and 5 of your E major pentatonic sound, okay? So the idea is going to be that we're going to hang the meat on the bones of the 1, 3, and 5, and the extraneous sounds that we're going to access are going to be the 2 and the 6 interval over each of the 3 major chords in the key of E, 1, 4, and 5, right? E, A, and B. When we come up to that C sharp minor chord, it is the relative minor of the 1 chord, so we don't really have to change our thought on what to play over that. There's no new information. It's just more like we have to look at it from the yin rather than from the yang, okay? Does that make sense? All right, so I'm hoping that this helps shine a little light on at least how I look at it. I don't know how anybody else does anything, but I'm definitely thinking that approach, okay? Now, is that to say that there aren't times where I access sounds that are, que un buen fin de semana, tengo que trabajar. Okay, entonces, adiós, Ian. Hasta luego. Okay, hermano. Well, I didn't know that you spoke Spanish. That's cool. All right, I hope you have a great weekend yourself and enjoy your day at work. I fortunately don't have to go too soon. Signor. You can see I'm wearing my favorite city in the whole wide world. Well, at least it has been for the last 10 years or so. Donostia, España. I love that place. Or at least I did. The world caught on to what I liked. Look, as much as I love the internet for its ability to allow me to do what I'm doing right now, it has ruined the world in a lot of ways. There's no more secrets. There's no more bargains. There's no more like, hey, nobody knows about this. I can go and enjoy something that's high quality without having to fucking wait in a line for a cupcake for 3 hours. What the hell's wrong with the world? Can everybody stop yelping me out of everything that's cool about New York? It really sucks. It sucks. Okay, yeah, like tourism is great for the city. But on the same token, it also, like everybody going to the same 4 restaurants, ugh, that's so annoying. Just like when you look up bad tablature on the internet or bad guidance on what's going on in a song and you see like a chord chart that's completely fucking wrong and everybody out there is playing it the wrong way. Like nothing against the Deadstein guys who created the musical songbook that a lot of Grateful Dead bands play out of, they have the wrong information in some of those things. So that is sorry, old man mode off, open mind mode on, hopefully. The idea is, hey, that you understand how to get that major pentatonic flat 3 sound under control, and then you add another layer to that onion. You create more vocabulary by adding more notes to it. So let's say if we were taking the idea one step further, let's do I Know You Rider, all right? Which is going to incorporate some major pentatonic flat 3 sounds, some major scale stuff that's more like Mixolydian or something like that. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and oh shit, let's get rid of that 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and. Let's see if we can get something here. So over the D chord, right, we could go. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the whole picture, right? That's not everything we need. We're going to need a couple more notes to flesh out that D sound. We want, right? We want to hear that kind of sound, like more like that. There. So that kind of idea where we're going to be adding in those few notes that are omitted from the major pentatonic flat 3 sound. We're going to add. So the 4 and the flat 7, they're going to factor in big time because we're going back to that C chord, and the 2 notes that we are omitting are the root and the 5th of that C chord. So that's a huge, huge amount of information to include. Or rather exclude. So if we leave that out, we're effectively removing a huge chunk of information that we're going to need on those other chords. So I'm not sure how to describe it any other way than that. Okay, so if we're thinking about, instead of going, we can now start to think about, see how I brought in the C? So over top of the D chord, we can be thinking about. Okay, like full Mixolydian. So. That sound, really, really lovely sound, because the C chord comes up, and then rather than playing C Lydian, which is technically correct because we're going 5, 4, 1 in the key of G, I tend to just think about it as being, or right, like C major pentatonic flat 3. I don't really think about it being a C Lydian chord, like a proper 4 chord. And then over the G chord, I'm definitely back to thinking about that being like a G major sound. But again, I'm leaning more heavily on my major pentatonic flat 3 chops over top of the 2nd and 3rd chord in there, okay? So a lot of that parallel pentatonic flat 3 thing happening in the Grateful Dead's music, in my opinion. That's what I'm hearing a lot of. All right? And that's how I'm definitely thinking about it the whole time. All right, so it's more like the setting determines what scales I get access, what scale tones I get access to. So everybody's asking, well, what am I thinking about when I play? Usually I think about what sounds am I allowed to use, or what sounds do I like the sound, what scale tones do I appreciate most over this particular setting. And okay, now we stumble into experience being the thing. Like, I've already developed my tastes towards those things, right? So at this point, it's not new to me. I already know what I like on all these options, so I can now double down on those philosophical approaches, and consequently, it enriches the kind of commitment, okay? And it definitely helps things sound more dialed in if you limit the options, okay? You can't play all 12 tones over all 12 over all 3 chords all the time. You kind of have to you have to create a hierarchy, in my opinion, okay? So over top of the D chord, I'm thinking about accessing the 1, 3, and the 5, okay? Judicious amount of flat 3. But I'm definitely allowing for the 6 and the 7 to play nice together. And I'll bring that 4 in as well. And then the sequences start to come in and... Right, and that's pure mixo. Okay, so then over the C chord... It's only there for a second, so I think major pentatonic flat 3, so I don't have to really debate with what to do with its 7 and its 4, but if I did, I would default to what I'm about to play into and what I was playing, which is the 5 chord and the 1 chord in the key of G. All right, so it would be, if I'm going to be blowing scales over top of all 3 chords, like if I was going... Right, like I would be going... playing all G major or modes of G major. So over top of that C chord, I'm not thinking C major like, I'm thinking C Lydian. Because that note right there is key in both in the D7 that I was just on and the G that I'm about to be playing into. All right, so you don't want to be introducing that weird that B flat note for any real reason other than over top of the G chord, you can slide in. That's about it, right? You don't really want to give too much weight to that B flat over anything other than as an approach tone, okay? So there's no wrong notes per se. We can find a use for all 12 tones over all 3 chords, but the issue is more of duration than inclusion, right? We can put some of that in there. It just would have to be quite fleeting. So we could use the major 7 even over top of a flat 7 chord. It would just be like a... Right? I'm not going... Right? So... Right, I can do that. right? So Garcia does do that from time to time, right? He'll go. Okay, so we're going to be able to make some nice sounds like that once we free ourselves from the shackles of, oh, I can only play these 7 notes over top of these 3 chords. No, you can include the other 5 tones that are available to you, but you just have to be very aware of how to apply them. There's no rules except does it sound good? And the thing that typically makes something sound bad is if you're choosing a note that can't handle duration, right? If I'm choosing a passing tone like this, that's gnarly, okay? However, watch, that's a B flat, okay? Watch me use it as the passing tone to get into the 6th degree over top of, right? Right? That kind of thing. Or definitely over top of the G chord. Right? Like that. Right? Okay. That's about it. I got to go upstairs and deal with some domestic stuff. I got to feed myself and my lovely wife, who is home on medical leave. And I hope everybody out there is having a good time. I think I've pretty much exhausted everybody today. What did I do? Oh, it's over an hour. Better than not doing anything with my time, I guess. All right, take it easy. I'll see you soon, okay?